with this particular story. Let's bring you another installment now. Someone who was watching that briefing earlier on, we speak to Patricia Visagie, SABC News Reporter. Patricia, yes, all the activities taking place at the airport now. We saw an out-of-breath Calvin running to make sure that we catch a glimpse of those visuals. But let's speak about the background of this particular story and how we got to this particular matter of this activity that we see at the airport. His parole period coming to an end, and now he'll be deported. Let's speak about the process.
Well, good evening, Bongiwe, and to our viewers. One thing for sure that we can talk about is the fact that this matter has been a thorn to the South African government for the better part of our constitutional democracy. If you just think about the fact that this assassination came on the eve of the 1994 elections, where many were hoping for the first democratic elections and the first black president in the country. And this particular attack almost derailed that vision. But of course, this man leaving South Africa today, leaving with so many unanswered questions. And I think that is, what's at the center of this matter, what makes it so controversial. And of course, today we heard the South African government, several ministers who came to brief the media, talking about the dynamics that are really embedded in the country's constitutional court following the ruling, of course, in 2022, where the Constitutional Court obviously ruled that Walus should be granted parole. And that came after he tried several times to apply for, of course, parole, which was rejected by several ministers. And one of the reasons why that application of Walus was rejected was had to do with the Hani family. They were not satisfied with some of the information that he was giving forward. You would understand, till to date, we still do not know all the detail in terms of who ordered the assassination, from who did the instructions come from, who paid for all of this. These were some of the detail that the Hani family, the SACP, the ANC were looking for. You would also remember that this has to do with the victim offender program that needs to obviously follow a particular path in order for an inmate to then be eligible for parole. So at the time, those dynamics made it difficult for the parole board to obviously, grant him parole, and for the ministers at the time to approve. And on the backdrop of that, he approached the Constitutional Court. And, the Constitutional Court, they work on the premise of the law at the time. They followed the law, saying that the country's law says that after an inmate had obviously, fulfilled or served a certain portion of their sentence, then they can be considered for parole. And at the time, Mr. Walus had spent close to 3 decades in prison. So on the backdrop of that, the Constitutional Court granted him his parole. They ordered the South African government at the time that parole should be given within 10 days of the ruling. But they also brought in another conundrum, saying that after 2 years, his parole would obviously then come to an end, and that ultimately makes him a free man today, and hence he has the right to leave. But it also has to do with his dual citizenship. He had a dual citizenship, meaning that he had both South African citizenship and the Polish citizenship. In 2017, the South African citizenship obviously came to an end, and he had held this dual citizenship from 1986 to 2017. So ultimately, today, what the South African government said is that he's illegal in the country. He no longer has citizenship, and therefore, following the Constitutional Court ruling that said only 2 years, he can no longer be in South African shores. Hence, they had to act immediately, and they had to make sure that he leaves South Africa.
And Patricia, now there's another issue, of course, in light of the many questions that you say still need to be answered here. There's now a request by Mrs. Hani for an inquest. Have they said how this will be handled?
Well, of course, the Minister of Justice, she told us that they are responding to this particular request. There has been meetings with the Hani family. The finer details of how exactly government will handle it, will administer it, that has not come out yet, but they definitely going to have an inquest. Of course, government will at a later stage communicate exactly, how the inquest will work, who will they be investigating, or who will form part of it. And this is really to help the Hani family to get the closure and the healing that they've been looking for. But also, perhaps it will reveal other people who may have been at the center of this assassination that to a large extent has really, played a pivotal role in terms of the sensitivity that we've been dealing with in the country throughout our democracy, with the Hani family for years, almost, for 3 decades now, asking, but who ordered this hit? Who are the people behind this? And today, their wounds are reopened as the man who was behind this assassination is free, and he will be reuniting with his family. But many are asking, what happens to the Hani family? And many are even asking, is the Constitution really truly serving the people of South Africa? And we heard the Minister in the Presidency, talking about some of the aspects that they are looking into, saying that, life imprisonment should be life imprisonment. And that obviously talks to how, moving forward, they'll also perhaps look at some provisions within the law that might have to be amended, so that you don't find yourself at this juncture where somebody who murdered another person, gets off without giving the proper answers as to what really happened, leaving families, without closure, leaving a whole country with so much, questions as to what really happened here. Who are the people behind this assassination?
And, Patricia, one of the big questions, yes, is the fact that who ordered this particular assassination. And I suppose it's the burning question that even the family is trying to get answered now. And it explains the pain that we would see on Mama Hani's face every time there's a commemoration of this day, and every time her husband is remembered, she always speaks about the fact that she still awaits the answers. And I suppose it speaks about the gaping wounds that potentially tonight, she's probably just sitting at home wondering what's to happen now.
Yeah. And I'm sure many who have sacrificed their lives, many other South African families, whose family members were freedom fighters, were at the forefront of fighting the apartheid regime at the time. Many of them who have paid the ultimate price, they share the pain, the struggle, and really just perhaps the trauma and devastation of the Hani family. Many who are asking, but how does a man who almost derailed the country's prospects, the country's dream and vision of having their first democratic elections after fighting for decades for freedom and democracy. So many people, as we know as a country, who really suffered, who really sacrificed for South Africa's freedom and democracy. How then do you let this man go with all these answers? And it's not just about them. Perhaps through him, one would have gotten so much clarity about even other cases, other freedom fighters who we still do not know what happened to them, where are they? And it is men such as Walus who perhaps have, the answers to those questions for many South African families, but in particular the Hani family, as of course he was a gallant freedom fighter, as many would describe him, who had some of the greatest intentions for the people of South Africa, and of course the Communist Party at the time also having so much that they still expected from him, and him perhaps as a leader at the time looking forward to be part of what he fought for, and that was, of course, freedom and democracy.
Yeah, Patricia, certainly. This one will definitely not end here. And let's see how, the ministers and the family handle this request for an inquest, because that's also another layer that's also going to be quite telling as to which direction this particular matter now takes. Thank you so much for that comprehensive update. That's SABC News reporter Patricia Visagie.